The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to Scariest Paranormal Radio Podcast. It is Friday, and we are having another guest here tonight. Tonight we welcome paranormal guest Alexander Brown. He's an author. He has his own YouTube channel, and he is a paranormal researcher. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Yes, it is. It is. I'm so excited. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. I know that I didn't do it justice. I know you do a lot more than what I mentioned. I know you're an author, but tell us a little bit about your podcast. You have a YouTube channel, right?
I do. The YouTube channel I have is called Bookworm of the Damned, kind of a play on Queen of the Damned since, books and everything. But with the channel, what I do is I do book reviews for horror books where I review what to expect from the book, my thoughts on it, and then also give some backstory on what you can expect from the author and also what inspired that story. So that's more so what I do right now. I do still dabble in writing a little bit, but a lot of that I've just kind of pulled back from just to kind of reinvent myself, really.
Okay, and you've done a lot of paranormal research up in the northern Mississippi area. What part of Mississippi are you from? Refresh my memory and let everybody else know.
Well, I'm from Vicksburg, Mississippi, and practically the whole place is haunted.
Oh, yeah, Vicksburg. Let me tell you, folks, Vicksburg, I went to Vicksburg a few years ago, and as a medium, and of course a psychic as well, I was kind of caught off guard. It's what I call a psychic blindside. I was not expecting that the whole town was a battlefield. And to me, there's nothing more haunted than some of these battlefields. I mean, you've got the trauma, you've got the untimely death, you have all of the strong emotions that's embedded there. And I got to Vicksburg, and just driving through the town, driving through the battlefield was absolutely traumatizing. I was hearing cannons. I was hearing, getting flashes in my third eye of war going on. I was hearing screaming. I got to my hotel room. I couldn't leave the rest of the weekend. I literally had to hold up in my hotel room and have food delivered because I could not get out and look at anything because the psychic energy there was just so incredibly strong. So, yeah, you're living in a paranormal hotbed up there, Alex.
Yes, and that's very much true. I mean, I work in tourism. I can't necessarily say where I work in tourism because that would be a conflicting interest. But we'll have people who come in and they're like, oh, well, where should I go? That's the most haunted. I'm like, listen, you're in Vicksburg. You're already here. So it's all around you.
Yeah, I can attest to that, definitely. So Alex is here tonight, and I've invited him here because Alex had a very unusual situation in the course of his paranormal investigations in one of the most haunted cities in the U.S., and he's going to share with us his experience. So you had an experience with somebody who had a Ouija board go awry, is that correct?
That's correct. The problem had actually started before we did the Ouija session, and I know a lot of people look down on using an Ouija board, but my philosophy is if you know how to use it correctly and you have a blessed board and you go into this with prayers and everything, then you're going to have a positive reaction. And since this incident, I have continued to use the Ouija board and I have had positive experiences. But this is the one time where it was a negative experience. And this is before I realized how to correctly use a board.
I do want to give a disclaimer because we are recording Alex in Vicksburg. One of the most common things that happen with paranormal, whether it be on an investigation, and I have found with even interviews over the internet, is interference with electronic equipment. And I have actually done radio shows where voices have come over the internet onto the radio show, whispers, and also electronic interference. So if there is interference, bear with us because that's a very common occurrence. So just bear that in mind. Okay, now, Alex, I want you to start over a little bit and just kind of do, I'm not sure where you left off.
Right.
I think you went through blessed. You were talking about the blessed Ouija boards, and you've always kind of done that. Yes, just I guess start off with what happened with this situation that made it different.
Okay. Well, with the Ouija boards, these are something that I use to help me be able to connect with spirit in the situation. And this is before I actually learned how to use an Ouija board, which there's a lot of prayers and such that I do to go into an Ouija session. And this is back when I was just very raw to the idea, but it was, I'm pulling out my notes here. It was January 2010. So 10 years ago, just about. I had a friend who will remain nameless, and she was living in a house that was a new home. And she started having some problems there with seeing a white cat that would just come through her home. And other people had seen this cat. Personally, I had not ever seen the cat, but I had heard stories about it, and we kind of thought, oh, cool, a ghost cat. That's pretty neat, you know? And so she said that there were other things that were going on, like strange vibrations of the home, kind of negativity and such. And a lot of times when I go out, I have my protective wall up, so I do not really grab onto vibes unless I'm deliberately seeking those. And she decided that she wanted us to investigate the situation. And so myself and my mother, we went over to her place and we started doing the Ouija work and everything. And to start with, the session was kind of playful. It was like we were speaking with a child. And as the session continued going, the whole demeanor of the sentence structure and spelling, it changed. So this kind of indicated to us we were talking to a different spirit. Well, as we continued doing the process of elimination with questions and just asking question after question, we finally got to the point where it admitted it was a different spirit than the child that we were originally speaking to, which it was a male child that we had started speaking to. And with this, we asked what its name was, and it refused to give a name. Well, it then went to the number 6, moved away from the number 6, and then returned to the number 6 for a second time. And I was anticipating like the third 6, you know, I was kind of like thinking, okay, this is really going to be kind of gimmicky in a sense if it moves to a third 6, but it never did. And that's kind of what confused us a little more. Well, as we continued talking, the whole vibration of the house, it just changed. It became very low, became very dark, somewhat depressing, very depressing, actually. And oh, as I'm talking about this, my heart's racing, just reliving it. But we were finally able to get a name out of who we were speaking with. And the name that came across was Belle. And we had no idea what this was. We weren't like educated in demonology or anything. It was just there. It was a name that we had never heard before. And so we finished off the session, and this is where research comes in. Which, by the way, whenever I do an investigation, I like to go into it blindly. I don't want to know the backstory of the place. I don't want to know what all is going on around it. I just want to go in as open-mindedly as I can, and whatever I receive, then that's where the research comes in to see if it is justifiable. Well, we started doing our research and discovered that with this specific entity, it was a king in hell. Well, it is a king in hell that is over 66 legions of demons. And when it makes itself known, it comes in the appearance of a white cat, a toad, or a man. And it just so happens that she had had the hauntings of a white cat go through her home. And this is research that we conducted as soon as the Ouija session was over. And so we were still at her house when this happened. And we were like, all right, we have no idea what to do with this. This is out of our hands. Luckily, Mom had a friend who was is a Catholic priest. And so we decided that we were going to talk to him for advice. So we leave her house that night, and about a week passes. And in that time, we've started, I say myself and my ex at that time, he lived with me. But we started noticing things in my home. And what happened was it started small. And it took place over the matter of about a good, I'd say 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks before we realized what was going on. But my home is always a home that's been open. It feels like home to anybody, and whoever walks through the front door, they're treated like family. And we had friends who came over, and they were the first ones to start noticing the vibrations that we were experiencing, which were the low vibrations. And friends would come over and they would say, the house just feels stuffy. I don't know what you've done with the place, but it doesn't feel as welcoming. They were pretty blunt about it. And where they would normally stay for about 3 to 4 hours at a time, they would come over and only stay for about 30 minutes and leave. And I wasn't too certain that what had come home with me was the entity that was at her house. But after experiencing the anxiety that built, the depression that came with it, the constant arguments between myself and my ex, which we had been at a good place during that time, but the arguments just picked up, and it was over so many nitpicky things, and the tensions were just high. And I decided, out of curiosity, I gave my friend a call who said her home had been haunted by the white cat. I called her up and I said, well, how's things going at your house? And she said, oh, they're fine. Ever since y'all came over, we haven't seen the white cat anymore. Everything feels like it's gone back to normal. The house just feels relaxed and everything. And it was at that moment that I realized that what was in her house had followed me home. And this was something where, it's like, even as I'm telling this story, I'm standing outside of my home because it's something that is still very tense to talk about. And it's something where I'd rather speak about it outside of my home versus inside, even though we do constantly cleanse our home with sage and prayers. But,
well, I have to tell you that every now and then your voice drags, and all of a sudden you go into slow motion. There's definitely some interference going on as you speak of it, and I do, for the sake of clarifying, because at first when you said the name Belle, I thought you meant Belle, like a girl's name, Belle, which would be French for girl. But you are talking about basically the demon that some people would pronounce Baal, Baal. Is that correct?
It is. Yes, it's spelled out Baal. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and that is a demon, and he's sometimes represented as a man with 8 legs of a spider, and a man's head with also the head of a cat and the head of a toad. So. It's very, very, very interesting. And what's interesting is, and I'm not an expert on demons, but a lot of people want to scream demons. But usually, when you have cases where there has been, actual demons, the typical thing that happens are illnesses that can't be explained, conflict in the homes, people having conflict on their jobs. So a lot of the things that you were experiencing were things that commonly happen with people who do get this sort of negativity attached to them. I just want to clarify that in case people were getting confused, because at first I thought you did say Belle, as in Belle.
Yeah, that's correct. It is Baal versus Belle. And it was, this was the only time I've ever entered what I would consider to be a demonic presence. And since this was my first and only time, I had honestly thought that the the haunting would have been different. I had seen too many movies like Amityville Horror. I had read too many books like Ed and Lorraine Warren and stuff, and just a lot of propaganda stuff. But when it boiled down